You're live on It's the Shoe. Please don't swear. Cringe, but had to be done, mate. Had to be done.
You know what? I still get all the cringe things. I done GB News last Saturday, I think it was. I got a message off them saying, "Hi Anthony, we've seen what you do with the Never Throw in the Towel project. We absolutely think it's amazing. We'd love you to feature on GB News and talk about your project." So I'm thinking, oh, fantastic! I'm going to have a real serious conversation on the news. First question the reporter introduces me is, "So Anthony, did you have sex in the jacuzzi?" I'm just like,
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking about a serious conversation, and the first thing you ask is about me hot tub antics. So
I mean, to be honest, it's an interesting kind of dichotomy, and I'll come on to that in a minute because you're right. News outlets like that, they should know better than that. That's especially the topic you're going on to talk about. What I'm interested in is, so a lot of people, you've got your pigeonhole of Big Brother, right? And yeah, we'll go on to that. But before you got on Big Brother, I'm very interested in that. Like, let's see, the year before you were on Big Brother, like, what were you like as a person? What were you like as a man then?
I was such a happy, fun-loving young lad, really, just absolutely loving life. In reflection, I was always when I look back at me life, what I was like as a young lad, I was such a really driven young man. My whole childhood was trying to be a footballer. Um, I come from a very much a football family. My great granddad used to play football for Celtic. My grandma was Celtic mad. Obviously, being from the northeast, supporting Newcastle, and like I said, come from a very sporting footballing family, and I was all over that. And I tried, all my life I tried to be a footballer. That dream didn't come off, and then the first job I got was a postman. Done that for maybe a year and a half, and it just wasn't me. And randomly got the opportunity to be a 70s disco dancer in a dance troupe called Stretch Limo's Boogie Express, where I was called Chico Importante, and that I wasn't too happy being a postman, but when I got that job as a 70s disco dancer, and I was on stage and all the lads, it was very much it was still like that footballing background, because it was all lads, and we toured together, we shared rooms together. It was literally like a band, but we didn't sing, we danced, and we toured all over the northeast, and then we went up to Scotland. So a year before Big Brother, that's when I had the idea. I was basically going to work not happy at all, thinking, I've got more in me. There's more in here. I think I'm capable of producing more in my life. But it was hard because I didn't have any education, because I wasn't academic. I was really bad at school. I deludedly thought I was going to be a footballer. So I didn't quite know what was next for me, but I knew I wasn't content, and I started having the idea of potentially getting on Big Brother, and that coincided with becoming a 70s disco dancer, and that gave me validation of what I wanted, and that I didn't want to be a postman, and it also gave me that extra confidence, and then that led me to almost being obsessive. The obsession that I had with being a footballer, that obsession actually turned into actually getting on Big Brother. I remember when I first when I was auditioning for Big Brother, I picked up me best mate from concert at like 3:30 in the morning, and then I picked another one of the lads. So there was two of us, and I literally drove from concert to Manchester, but like wasn't there to play games. Like I was there to get on the show. I was there for, like, there might have been a lot of people who were doing it for fun, whereas like I was on a mission to, like, right, I'm going to get on Big Brother. This is going to change up my life.
Mhm.
So that's, sorry if that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's
No,
what I was doing.
it's interesting. Do you know, when you think back to, like, what age would you have been then before going on to Big Brother?
I was 20. I think I just turned 23. I was
Mhm.
23 when I'd got on, but a really young, naive 23-year-old.
So you've got the Anthony Hutton on Big Brother after Big Brother, what you're doing now. But like, I'm interested in, like, when you talk about, like, you were driven, you were like, you had it in your head that this was going to change up your life. Were you aware of, like, your conscious or subconscious thoughts at that point? When you talk about mental health, you talk about awareness of your thought patterns. As a young lad at 23, was that even on your radar to think of, like, mental health, to think of stuff like that, to think of your own thought process?
Um, to answer that, it would probably be yes and no.
Right.
I think there's, so from one advantage, um, when you're younger, you don't you I certainly didn't look at the negatives. I was like that, thinking, I was thinking
Right.
girls, money, fame,
Right.
ch- changing my life.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, and I had that when I was wanting to be a footballer as a young lad. I was thinking, I'm going to be a footballer. I'm going to be a footballer. I don't need to get an education. I don't need that. It was very much just simple thinking, and quite direct. There wasn't, yeah, there probably wasn't, obviously with age, there wasn't obviously the self awareness that I have now as a 42-year-old man. And in terms of mental health, that I mean that was not a word back in
Yeah.
back back in 2005.
Yeah.
They, that was something that I certainly wasn't
Mhm.
familiar. When we'll probably get onto this later, but when I was not in a good place,
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why. I thought I thought I was really weird. I couldn't understand it.
Mm.
When I look back at it now, it's like it's very, very obvious. It makes, there's a lot of logic of why I was feeling them, because I'd had such a high. I don't even know whether I had it was well, it was mental health, but my situation was very, very circumstantial. So when I got to the point of actually making the move, and I'd changed things up, and I'd moved away from where I was living because I had to,
Mhm.
and I went and I got a real job, and the real job was something that uh, I was terrified of getting a normal job. But once I actually made that move, like, I instantly was better. I
Mhm.
was instantly like, a
Mhm.
weight was off my shoulder, and I instantly felt like back to myself. So my situation was very, very circumstantial,
Mhm.
um, around, like, mental health.
Yeah. I mean, you're in an era which is also, like, it's interesting for me because it's, I mean, the lad culture for a start, right? The football, obviously, I made it, and I felt like I was very lucky to make it because there's a barometer of, like, a load of lads that could have made it, right? Um, Even pre mental health era, like, we did have an inner voice, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm going to be a footballer, and you're like, I'm going to be a big brother, right? And it kind of was in that positive lad culture kind of thing, and we both, in some circumstances, have suffered from that in a way, being around that kind of mentality later in life. but the inner voice is still there, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But in terms of, if you think back to when you were in, say, Big Brother, right, and the impact on your life, your finances, your dating life, your sex life, as well as your mental health, right? At that point in time, there wasn't social media properly, was it?
No.
Facebook was kind of just getting into gear early in America, I think, even then, not even here. So, how do you think you would have coped in the same set of circumstances, but add in social media? How do you think you would help? How would that have affected you mentally?
It's a great question, that, because I think it's a great question, but it's hard to answer because you've got one aspect from the social media point. So because there was no social media, there was basically a 15-minute window of fame.
Yeah.
So that window affected the finances, and like the finances and the money was certainly a big part for me of basically why when things started to dwindle. If there was the social media aspect, that would have, if there was social media and I'd won Big Brother, I would have had millions and millions of followers. The millions and millions of followers would have led on to more things. Anything that I'd done, I would have probably done well in because I had the followers.
Yeah.
But also, there's the huge negative because slander, and when I was back then, if someone said something negative to me back then, I really took it personal, and because I always tried to pride myself on being a nice guy, and so when I would get hostility thrown towards me, I just couldn't understand why. I couldn't get my head around it. Again, with age, you understand that's the nature of the beast. Like, you're never going to get everyone who likes you, and people who do say negative things, it's on them because they're in a certain place, and it's nothing really to do with you. So again, it's a tricky one to answer that.
Yeah, but I think you make a good point there on the whole, like, I mean, it's not just people saying something negative to you. It's people saying something negative to you at scale. Like, it's like, it's almost, I get you. It's like, I think about when I played football and there was no social media. So I had a chat with on the podcast, the third podcast about Clark Carlisle, who's a Premier League footballer. He had his issues with suicide as well, and we talked about the same topic. And we were like, we would get knocked if every time that you lose as a defender, you get a 4 out of 10 in the paper, even if you had a class game. That's what we talked about. But that's one thing, right? Like one journalist giving you a score. But we're talking about like social media, where like every man and his dog, in terms of they've got at least 50,000 fans giving you a score, and that's just a different level. Again, so coming out of Big Brother, like, I'm aware of, like, you had mental health struggles and stuff like that. Can you remember the moment where things started to change, or can you give us a little bit of a background to like the exit of Big Brother and like what led into that kind of mental health journey, I suppose?
Yeah. So I come out, and I say this all the time. So anyone who's listened to other podcasts, apologies for me continuous same answers, but it was such an extreme taste of fame that I had, like, overnight. It was ridiculous in reflection. I come out, pulling a John Travolta, 70s pause, doors opened, I've got fireworks, all over the place, crowds with posters with my name on and pictures, and then first person I speak to is Davina McCall. Next day, I sign a £200,000 photo shoot. I get whisked off to do in a mansion, and then just continue to do loads of awesome stuff. luckily enough, I'd done a TV program called The Match, where I got to play in front of St James's Park in front of the 52,000, and I'd done that. 2 years off the bounce, and this was going to be my little brag, but I got man of the match both years, and I remember like swapping shirts with Matt Letizia,
Nice.
and that to me was just like, it was a little win in my head, because I was like, well, you weren't a footballer, but because I was a season ticket holder when it was like the Gallagher where you stood, and
Yeah.
me and my mate used to like sit right at the front on the wall.
Yeah.
When Mike Hooper was Super Duper Hooper was in goal.
I know him.
And I remember when Matt Letizia scored them 2 goals against Newcastle. He was like a magician.
Yeah, he was.
And so like, done some unbelievable stuff, but slowly but surely, like, I managed to capitalize on that for, work was really, really good, maybe for 3 years, maybe, and then fourth year, and maybe it started to dwindle. Then it got to the point where I was like calling the agent, and then there was no work coming in. At this point, I'd moved. I was living in London for a couple of years, and then I'd moved back to the northeast, and I was like doing commutes if work was coming in and stuff to London. And then it got to the point where I was I'd bought a house in Newcastle, Newcastle city centre, and because there was no work coming in and stuff, and I was a young single lad, I was just literally going out all of the time. And then it got to the point where the thoughts were like, nothing's coming in, and like everyone who I would see, no matter who it was, whether it was like friends or friends of friends or whatever, always get asked the same question, like, what are you doing now? What are you doing next? And because I was like, there was the ego, I was embarrassed. I would bullshit, or I would put some form of bravado on and say, this is dumb, this is going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And it got to the point where I was not wanting to, engage in conversation. And then it was, it got to the point where it was like, I would be thinking, have I got to get a normal job here? And that just like terrified me, and it made me extremely embarrassed, and it made me the ego was definitely in place, and it was like, I can't get a normal job because like I'm I'm known as Anthony from Big Brother. That was like that was part of my identity, because that's what I was always pointed at. The amount I would always go out, oh, there's him from Big Brother, can I have a picture? And yeah, so it's slow. I wouldn't say there was like a pivotal moment. I would say probably is more of a gradual like decline, into the point where it was like, I need to get a normal job, and I didn't get a normal job. I didn't do that for such a long time, and then it spiraled into started to get dead bitter. So it was like blaming people, and was thinking, well, why didn't I do this, and why didn't I do that, and like I said, started getting really down, really depressed.
Yeah.
Spiraled.
And like, in terms of like, you can share what you want to share about this, but like where you're at now and what you're doing now with the men's mental health and suicide stuff, was that how low it got? Did you get into that kind of level of like suicidal thoughts in that sense?
So
Is that
yes, so it so I didn't know. I just knew I was obviously in a horrendous dark place, and basically what I was having is I didn't know this terminology now. I was having passive suicidal thoughts where, like, I was just, and this is, I don't know why I would always think, but I would be in the house, and so a lot of the time my house had turned into a party house.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the party was over and stuff, that's when I was probably at my worst thoughts. So I was having the passive suicidal thoughts where if someone like said, "There's a button, if we press it, it's over," I would have said, "Please press it."
Mm-hmm.
I was having the passive ones. I wasn't at a stage where I was like having the active suicidal thoughts, where
Mm-hmm.
I was like specifically like, right, I'm going to do this and this is how I'm going to do it. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there. I was just because I'd missed, I'd missed 5 mortgage payments. I had
Mm-hmm.
no direction in my life. I'd,
Mm-hmm.
all of me real proper mates had, they'd moved on. They'd got married. They had careers. I was hanging around with younger acquaintances, um, and I felt like I just felt like a huge loser because in my head, I've always, because come from a sporting background, and like I've always wanted to be a winner. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always been driven. So I felt like such a loser because I thought, how have you managed to get all this success and all this fame? Like you've single-handedly got it,
Mm-hmm.
and you've messed it all up. And
Mm-hmm.
look at you now, you're doing drugs, you're doing alcohol, you're hanging around with people you never normally would hang around with. I'm going to lose the house that I bought with me winnings from Big
Yeah.
Brother. Like you're a loser. So that my self worth, and I had no direction as well. I had no routine. Because there was nothing going on in my life.
Yeah.
So that's where I was.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much in that I can resonate. I think a lot of people can resonate in certain circumstances. I think the whole mental health thing, when you're in a dark place, you're in a dark place, and the analogy of a button, I've heard so many times.
Have you?
Yeah, so many times.
Right.
I was in situations where I've had the ups and downs through sport, through life as well, and I've used the analogy of a button, and
Right.
it's not like you want to kill yourself, right? But
Yeah.
it's that you want something to stop. So the analogy of a button, stop, start. It's like that's it, isn't it? You just want
Aye.
to stop. It's not that you want the rest. You just want it to stop.
Aye. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very. I mean, I suppose in some kind of way we share similar traits about the Northeast. Fame, football, stuff like that. Ego. I certainly went on a similar journey after sport. Where you get a little bit like, oh, is this me now? Is this what I'm about? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say though that was the way back for you? Like, what was there a moment? Was it progression?
Um. It was. It was. It was. It. My circumstances got that bad. Where I like something had to change.
Mm-hmm.
Something had to change, and you know what? I got a little bit lucky. I did get a little bit lucky because what happened was someone who I was in the hair industry, so I'd to flip it back. When I started doing the dancing, I had a lot of free time, and I always loved getting my hair cut. So I
Mm-hmm.
always had a passion for fashion. So I'd got into the hair industry just before Big Brother, um, with a company called Saks. Anyway, there was a guy who was like high up at Saks. He basically he randomly reached out to me and said, "We've got this, like I've got this opportunity to, you know, barbershops and in the hair salon and stuff. Do you want to? Do you fancy like getting involved? Do you fancy getting back in?" And it was like it was a bit of a branch, and I was like, you know what? and I rang my best mate. I rang me my best pal, who's like a brother to me. I rang him like basically saying, like I think this meant I had to like move away from Newcastle. I had to move to Darlington, and I said, you know what? I said I think I'm going to move away, because he didn't fully know where I was at, but he knew the circumstance. He knew the crowd I was hanging around with, and he knew what type of places that I was at. I said, I think I'm going to move away, and have a fresh start. And he said, I think it's a good move, mate. He said, I think it's a good move for you. And that there was something, you talk about the voice, there was something in my head going, there was a self-awareness going, you need to change, you need to like really like change things up. I talk about changing things up when I do get speaking now. It's something that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah.
If there's something in your life that you need to change, you've got to change it up. And that move turned out to be one of the best moves that I ever made, because my life started building momentum from that move.
And can you tell us a bit more about like what that's led on to now? Because I'm obviously aware of what you're doing now. You've got the retreats, and I know there's the link with when you're speaking to particularly men, doing you've got your barber stuff and stuff like that. But can you tell us a bit more about that, and in terms of like how you got into your retreats and your mental, your men's mental health stuff, advocacy at the minute?
Yeah. So I'd moved. Honestly, that move was fantastic, because that the first salon so started working at a hair salon, and honestly, I talk honestly. I know we've got a short time, but honestly, you're just passionate about something. Honestly, I remember my first day, walking to the hair salon. Like, I was so nervous. Like, I was so, and honestly, I was like, I remember walking to work, and it was raining, and this is going to sound totally corny, but I was walking around, and the rain was falling down on my head, and I was just like, oh God, I'm so happy to be like alive. I know, like this. I knew it was like I've got to start from scratch. I'm starting from back here now. I'm having to, I've got a real setback, and everyone else is like ahead of me, all my peers. I knew it was the right move, so I was like still like really kind of proud. And I ended up meeting my now wife, who I've got two beautiful boys too, in that hair salon. And from then, when I started getting into the hair industry, and then I ended up opening a barber shop, and then the job absolutely fascinated me, because I could not get over the stories and the rapport that and the magic that was actually coming from that barber chair experience. And time after time, I would come home from work, and I would start telling me my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, like saying, "No, like this, what I've been told today is unbelievable."
Yeah.
And I would often get messages saying, like, mate, hi mate, like you don't realise what you've done for me there. Having that one-to-one conversation, and then there was, and it nudged me, because for quite a long period, like I didn't share that past to anyone. People would ask me, why are you in Dalton? And I would I would lie and say, well, oh yeah, business opportunity came my way, blah 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 blah. I wouldn't say, I never used to say this was a specific active move to me getting into a better headspace.
Yeah.
But because of the stories that were coming my way in the barber chair, like give me the nudge to start sharing like my experience, because I thought I was like, listen, mate, I've been there. Like, you can get through it. I know you can, because I have, and you can. So I just thought, actually, if I share this, can give you hope as well. And there's just endless amounts of stories. What one guy came and seen me, and he gave me a letter, and he told us that he was, which was mad. So that this guy gave me a letter, and he shared with me, like, he'd been really, really struggling, and he said he hadn't taken a selfie for a couple of years, and he says, actually, coming out of there was the first time I took a selfie for a couple of years, because I just felt really good, and the chat that you given me was amazing. And then, and apologies again, this is long-winded, but then this story takes a bit of a U-turn, and there was the passing of my grandma. And so my grandma brought me up. My grandma was just like this, such a special woman. I had such a special relationship with this woman. She was my dinner lady at school. She never missed anything that I ever done. She worshipped me, and I worshipped her. And when she passed away, she passed away on the same day as my son's christening. And it was mad. Like, on my 40th birthday, milestone in your life, I decided to send my grandma a letter, and I wanted to like share it, saying thank you, and I signed it. I signed it saying, "So lucky, so blessed," and she sent me a video, saying that. She says, "Happy birthday, happy 40th, son. I seen you first." She always used to boast about, she was the first person who picked me up, and I held her hand on our last breath, and it was a very, very difficult experience to go through, seeing that, and actually literally holding my hand on our last breath. And but like, it put me back, like, earlier that year, about being so lucky and so blessed, and the video that she sent me, and I was like, wow, like, how lucky am I? She greeted me to the world, and I held her hand and said farewell. And when it was time, to do when it was conversations about organising a funeral, and the family were discussing and stuff, the topic of the eulogy got brought up, and I, being the type of person I am, I've never, and I don't shy away from adversity, especially being in some of the places that I've been through. And I said I want to do the eulogy, and I literally, like, locked myself away literally locked myself away for a couple of days. I took this eulogy, like, so serious, and it was like almost therapy to me. I was writing and writing. I was trying to make the best story I possibly could, and started being a little bit. Right at the end, it was like, started to kind of like start to be sad, because I was coming to the end of the eulogy. And then I was like, no, this story isn't ending on a bad note. This is going to end on a good note. And I started talking about our attitude towards getting stage 4 cancer. Stage 4 cancer in 2014, and I used the words, she never threw in the towel, and she'd done everything she possibly could to keep on living. And the project's called Never Throw in the Towel, strapline, keep on living. And that was describing that attitude towards getting stage 4 cancer. And straight after the funeral, a bloke came up to us, outside the church, and he was crying, and he thanked me for the eulogy, and he told us my grandma would be so proud of us. And then, like, this is where something, I say this project's almost, I see it as fate for me. I got a message from the same bloke, sharing with me in a big long message, sharing with me that he's been really struggling with his mental health, and he'd been seeing he was seeing professional help, and he just wanted to let me know that he's clung on to the words "never throw on the towel," and that that hit me, and for days on end, it was like all of the it was almost like it was just the final nudge and push
Yeah.
that I needed to that I started to and something came over me where I was like, I'm going to start talking about this topic. I'm going to start talking. So I actively started trying to talk about, actively started trying to be a speaker. I didn't have a clue how to do it. And when I got the first speaking opportunity, the organizer basically got in touch and she said, "What do you want the talk to be called?" And the first thing that came to my head was the talk's going to be called "Never Throw on the Towel." So that was, apologies, this is a long answer, but I won't compromise this story. So that was in September, and the talk had so much impact. I couldn't get over the messages I was getting afterwards, and I was like, wow, flipping hell, like that was crazy, the response. And something just came over me. So in November, I was like, I love being outdoors, mate. I still love sport, and I thought, and I know that exercise and how good it is for your mental health. I'd also discovered cold water as well, and the huge and the huge benefits of that. I'd attended a retreat, a cold water retreat, maybe I don't know, a couple of years beforehand, and couldn't believe the impact that it had on me. So I was like, I'm gonna do something, and it's going to be called Never Throw on the Towel Project, and it's going to be it's a free retreat for men, and it's going to be, and I put a post up what it was, and it was going to be a walk, talk, boxing, breath work, cold water dip, and there was 9 men that signed up, and I was like flipping. I thought there was going to be more than that turned up, and then I started having have the inner voice. I was thinking, is this even a good idea? And then because I'm full of ideas, I'm always thinking of ideas, and I started thinking, is it one of them stupid ideas you've got that just probably isn't a good idea? Then the same guy who wrote me a letter, he sent us a message saying, "Hi Anthony, where I'm attending your retreat. I'm bringing my 2 sons because I've had to go and collect my son from Manchester because he's in a really dark headspace, and we've had to bring him home because he's in a terrible way. And I think this retreat will be really good for us." So I was like, "Oh, I have to. It's on now. Like we have to do it." Done the retreat. 9 turned up. Came away on the Sunday, and Craig, who was an attendee, who's now my partner in the project, he sent me a massive long message saying, "And mate, you have to keep this. You have to keep this going. You have to continue doing this." He went, honestly, the stories that have been shared today amongst them men talking. He went, there's some magic happened there. He went, you have to do it again. And then every other attendee was like, is there going to be another one? When's the next one? And it was meant to be a one-off. So then we decided to do a second one. 31 men turned up, and it was like unbelievable. And
it's interesting. So you created an environment to, I suppose, a safe environment as well for men to not only let's be honest, like in many respects you've been in the media, you can be seen as a star, I suppose, as other people could look at you, and people could just come along because it's yours, right? but also typically we know blokes, right? We've been in the dressing room, like lads, blokes don't just open up because you've been on telly, right? They open up because they feel safe and it's a safe environment. That's really powerful what you've created there. That's impressive to
Yeah.
create an environment for people to share with each other. That's powerful.
You know what? What's an interesting thing. So this, I was talking to a woman from HR when I was attending I attended a company, and she
Yeah.
actually said the blokes actually. She says the struggle to speak to her direct across from each other, and she says, you know what? When I take them on the walk, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually I get a lot more out of them, and that I never realised that to a certain extent as much as when she like pinpointed it, and I think a key part of it is when you getting out like we done it at Hamsley Forest, which is an absolute beautiful spot out in nature as
Yeah.
well. And I think if you you go on an hour and a half walk around the
Yeah.
tree, it's certainly a good way, and that's what I say because I speak to parents now and they go, I just can't, like, they won't open up, and I'm like, and that's one of the bits of advice that I give. I say, you know what? I said, don't do it in the house when you're sat directly across from them. I said, I tell you what, go on a walk with them for an hour
Yeah.
and a half, 2 hours, and actually
Mm.
they might open up a bit more there
Yeah.
rather than saying, sat direct from them saying, tell us what's the matter, what's the matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've had plenty of stuff in the past, and like it's intense, right? And it's funny because nobody taught me to do that, but it's almost like human behavior. Sometimes some things just feel intense,
yeah.
and like a walk, genuinely, like I mean, environment does predict behavior. It can open people up.
For me, the outdoors is like it's absolute magic. Like it
Yeah.
it really is. We done a we done a retreat yesterday,
Mm.
and it might have been the most impactful one that I've seen to date. There was one particular incident, like magical magical thing happened with a guy who had never done the cold water. Oh my god, the joy, the joy
Mm.
he had from after experiencing doing the cold water. It took the whole group, like the whole group were just like in awe of how this guy had how much joy he had from
Yeah.
the experience, and
Yeah.
everyone just like smiling.
Oh, class.
It was just absolutely class. And there's also, you know what? One of the fantastic things is about doing these retreats. Like we've got some regulars, and again, there's one lad in particular who really wasn't in a good place, and he's managed to like fight his way through. And now you're seeing him really helping guys and giving them advice and talking, and it's it's great to see. Like it
Yeah.
really is. Like
I suppose it's also important to say like I mean I'm guessing here, but it's probably very good environment for you. I know you set it up, but to be in that as yourself, being you, not being the founder of it, but actually just being in the environment yourself, even if you're struggling and having we all have shit days,
well,
right? So to you, for you to go and use your own ecosystem as well must be quite
yeah,
rewarding.
no, like a lot, like people say to me like, flipping hell, it's you're doing this, you're doing it for free and you're giving up your time, like it's so nice of you and it's amazing. And I'm like, but like I absolutely love doing it. Like I
Yeah.
I I thrive. Um, I love being around blocks.
Mm.
Like I generally am that type of block. Um, and like I adore that camaraderie. I love
Hmm.
the outdoors. I love the cold water. So if I hadn't organised that and I'd seen seen it, I'd be attending. I'd be attending regardless.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's I love it, mate. It's like it's fun to me.
You can tell. But tell you what, there's definitely something in the cold water thing, because I did that through football, but it was more like I did it when I was recovering from injury.
Yeah.
What's dead interesting to me is like nobody said to me ever, that's really good for your mental health.
No.
But it is. It's massive. Like,
Yeah.
and like I know it, but I still don't often do it, which is interesting as well. You know, like that it's got all these endorphins, more than alcohol and drugs and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and we still don't do it. But like, I suppose your enthusiasm is quite infectious, which makes me want to do it. But also, I can get the fact that, like, just that I know where you come from. The lad, the dressing room culture, the lad culture, men culture. Men just be men. You know, going to
And
do something.
what that can that almost can be a negative, almost, some like in this modern day world. It's but
Yeah, mhm,
it's extremely masculine, but
yeah,
but it also has extremely soft moments, like which I've just shared about
yeah,
everyone helping each other. So it's not just like, lad,
yeah,
but actually it's that, majority of my life, and is me wife and my kids. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? And that little time I get away doing the treat, where we're all acting like big kids.
yeah.
Uh, it's great. It's great.
We come from working class cultures as men, right? I've got a sport and influence early on in my life, and to us, like, banter, when we say lads, men being men, it's a throw of banter, but you throw a bit of banter out to see if it's safe, to see, can I count on you, when the shit hits fan, can I count on you? And it's quite a sophisticated way of actually testing somebody out. Let's be honest, the brutal honesty is the men's suicide rate is through the roof. So if me and you can have a chat about how lads chat, how men chat, dressing room culture, if you want to call it, it's not saying all men are that, because men are very soft, very feminine in many ways.
Yeah.
But if we close that door and say we can't talk about that, men shut the door, don't speak, don't open up. The easiest place to start is where they're at. It's the banter, it's the dressing room culture, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it either, because there should be no stigma against men's mental health at
No.
all. And
No.
men be men,
No.
well, we are who we are. We come where we come from, but doesn't make us like that. Doesn't limit us to what we are,
Yeah.
but how we act and how we behave.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mask, and
Oh,
the way to break the mask down is to meet
100%.
them where they're at. We can't help people if we pretend to be anything else. We've got to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
And
But
we've been there. We've been that. We've been them men. We've been them
but
lads.
yeah. But you know what though? Like, the you the this the you mentioned the suicide rate. Um, but the absolute, like, I do this, like, I'm heavily in that field, right?
Yeah,
And there still is, it, it's absolutely getting better, but
yeah,
honestly, there's still a massive
yeah,
stigma to it.
yeah,
Like, there still is. I attended one company, a couple of months ago, and the bloke who got me in, like, after he'd got me in, the feedback was really good. But
yeah,
he was telling me, he said, the the feedback of getting you in here was like, why, like, why do we need to talk about mental health? He said it was a really negative response, and like, when I attended, like, it wasn't a very warm welcome. Luckily I did manage to
mm,
change them round, and that's what I can't, like. For me, it's so simple, because if you look at if it's man's biggest killer,
Mm-hmm.
which it is,
Mm-hmm.
then everyone will all agree that it needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
And if we talk about it, we will have more knowledge.
Yeah.
And if we have more knowledge, we'll potentially save lives. And you touched on before about, in one of my slides, I have a picture of it, a big massive monster,
Mm-hmm.
huge picture of a monster, and I say, imagine if there was a huge monster out there killing men globally on
Mm-hmm.
average of one man every minute of every day. There would be It would be splattered all over the news.
Mm-hmm.
The article going, "Have you
Yeah.
seen this monster killing all these men?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I change the slide and I say, "The monster is suicide. Those statistics are suicide."
Mm-hmm.
So the, there has to be a change in culture.
Yeah.
That, especially with the northeast being
Yeah.
the worst region in the UK. You've got
Yeah.
construction. Construction's the worst profession in the UK for suicide. And I always, in my talks, I always do an example, and I ask the question to the blokes in attendance. I say, if you felt anxiety, down, depressed, something that's really getting to you in your headspace, hands up who regularly speaks to someone.
Mm-hmm.
You get no hands up. And then when I open it up to the women, you always get a full house. All the women put the hands up. That happens
Mm-hmm.
every time. And I know with different animals, we are different animals to women,
Mm-hmm.
but the there definitely has to be a shift, and there definitely has to be a change in culture around talking.
Yeah.
Talking's not enough, but talking is the first step.
Yeah. It segues very nicely into my last question. If you like, what advice would you give to, like, let's say somebody's watching this or listening to this right now, struggling with their mental health silently, right? I know there could be a load of different steps they could take to a certain degree, but what would your best piece of advice be to somebody listening to this right now that's just struggling silently with their mental health?
I would say nothing in life lasts forever. That is a fact, and that is including the bad times. So start if you just firstly, I would say, if you haven't spoke to someone, speak to someone, whether that's your loved one, whether it's a professional, whoever you feel comfortable about reaching out and speaking to someone. Um, and so first speak to someone. Also, take some action. So try and, so if there's something that's getting you down, whether that's a toxic relationship, whether it's your weight,
Mm-hmm.
whether your whatever it is, if you can change it up, because I'm a big believer in, you have to take action yourself. Um, and start doing the good stuff. Maybe come, you know, don't go down the obvious route of alcohol, which us men tend to do. We're three times as likely to turn to substances as women. That's probably the worst thing well, it's one of the worst things you can do. And go the opposite way and get yourself moving, get yourself doing exercises, start walking, start getting out in nature. Um, just do the simple things, and from slowly but surely you can get better if you just implement the right things and not do the bad things. And just, you know what, sometimes, you look at, I have Gary Speed, I have his video on my slideshow for when I do my talks,
Yeah.
and watching him do football punditry on the day of
Mm-hmm.
his death,
Yeah.
and he was operating at a very high level. He was doing football punditry on paper. He had everything. He wasn't like a madman, was he? He wasn't like a madman.
I mean, I remember I was driving in the car because like Gary Speed was a mentor to me when I was at Newcastle, and I remember so at the time because I was living in Saddleworth and Oldham, and I was going to the skip to just do me manly skip run, and it came on the news, ironically, which is in Salford, not far from where I was at as well for Match of the Day, and in the BBC studio. So it was like I know where he was. That was messing with my head a bit. So I knew physically where he was, and like I mean, we weren't best mates or not, but like as a young lad, like I was in the first team with him, right? And he was like had his arm around my shoulder after the games and stuff, and he was a mentor, and I just I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it right in my head. It's
Yeah,
mental.
yeah. Well, literally, like so. I do, that his story. Um, that's the story that always, like I just remember where I was,
Yeah,
and I
same.
remember,
Yeah,
and I think I don't know whether it was because he played for Newcastle. I remember being in his presence and meeting him, and he was such handsome. He was like, you know, and he, because he was a footballer, I was in awe. And
yeah.
doing doing research, like doing research on that, because obviously I decided to put him in a slide and talk about his story.
Mm.
From my research, no one knew anything that was up. His
No,
wife,
no.
no one knew anything. But one thing one thing that we do know is that he had so much going on up
Mm.
there, but he didn't talk about it.
No.
And I'm not, you know what? I don't know whether everyone can be saved. They
Mhm.
probably can't, but I do think lots of people could be saved if they reached out and got help
Yeah.
and and spoke. And some, like I don't. Sometimes you've just got to, if you've had something really bad in your life when you faced adversity, and I know that me and you have shared
Mm.
stories, and we've got to know each other a bit before doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when it gets that bad, you've got to really dig deep, like dig deep in there, and it might you've got to try and find something,
Mm.
and it might be some people turn to God. It might be faith.
Mhm.
I remember some people, when I done this cold water retreat for the very first time, this man who was taking it, he said the cold water saved me life. You've got to dig deep. You've got to
Mm.
dig deep, and that's why I'm so passionate about like not giving in and
Mhm.
trying to just not take your own life.
Yeah.
Like I said, like Gary Speed, looking at him, that he was not a crazy man.
Mm.
Like he was a switched on man. He obviously had a lot of stuff going on in his head, but you
Mhm.
just got to. I know we've maybe went on the tangent. You asked us for one bit of advice, and I've give you 50. But
No, but no. To talk about Gary Speed, obviously, like I knew him really well. It's a topical point, and it's. I mean, we can talk about like men and men's mental health and all this kind of stuff, but we've also got to talk about highly sophisticated, intelligent men, which he was,
yeah,
and oftentimes statistically as well. There's a it's not it's it doesn't discriminate really, does it? It's people of high acumen, of high
yeah,
intelligence, mask it the
yeah,
best.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. it's across the board. Have you ever seen? I tell you, this is a recommendation for
Mm.
any for anyone's watching it, and it's a really powerful video, and it's called "Depression, My Black Dog."
Okay.
Have you ever seen it?
Say that again. I'm just going to type it down.
The video, it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's called "Depression, My Black Dog,"
Right.
and
Okay.
it's a really powerful video, and
Yeah.
it touches on, and this is something that I haven't experienced, but I know I have spoke to some men who the and it's hard to give advice for these people because they don't know why
Mm.
they're depressed, and they
Mm.
don't know why they're feeling that way, and the video shows actually you might some people might just actually live with that depression, but you've got to get that depression on a lead, and it shows the journey of this depression and this dog
Mm.
being overbearing,
Mm.
but then it shows the transition of the bloke starting to speak. It shows him getting professional help. He
Mm.
starts exercising, and he actually gets this black dog depression on a lead, and he's in control. And that's sometimes when you've got to do. You've just got to use these shields to
Mm.
to to get them out. And you might have to actively, like, right, I have to run. I've got to
Mm.
do I've got to do 4 miles on a morning or a night to just keep me head clear. Or every morning I've got to have a cold dip, or
Yeah.
I've got to go to church on a Sunday morning and pray to God, because that's what's in me. That's what I found. There's You've just
Yeah.
got to try and find something what what
You're right.
resonates with you.
You're right. I mean, it's not about having a magic bullet. It's not about having one thing that fits everybody. It's about having accessibility to as many ideas as you can possibly give to people to just say,
Yeah,
like, try something, right? Just
yeah,
try something.
yeah.
I tell you what, there is one thing, like, there was one phrase you said about, oh, it's been about half an hour ago now, and it was 5 words, and it was in relation to your grandma, and I think it's quite a powerful way to put across you and your passion and everything else, and all you embody into what you're doing. But you said, I won't compromise this story. And I loved it because it's exactly what you've done. And I think it's, you've obviously had your own challenges, you've had the highs and the lows of life, you've had everything that comes through it. But I do love that tenacity. Don't don't ever compromise your story,
I
right?
won't.
Never. And I'm definitely not just for, like, the laudits of coming and doing a cold water swim. I genuinely want to do one. Like, I genuinely want to do one. Because I struggle. I try it in the shower and I just cannot do it. I cannot get in that. I cannot get in the cold bath.
You
But I
know
love
what?
the fact of doing it in nature.
You know what though? Honestly, the cold shower for me, it's not the same.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
The cold water, it's a bit annoying
Yeah.
when you emerge
Yeah.
fully, your full body's in, your body changes. There's cortisol gets all the endorphin, the dopamine, everything's the shower. You don't get that hit.
Yeah. Fair enough.
You get it from your full body being immersed in it. So it is a bit different.
I don't think I've ever done it properly. I think I did it in sport or just to waist height for
Yeah,
injury, and I've done it. I tell you a lie, I've done it like in the plunge pool at like Centre Parks, like for half a second. But
yeah,
I've never, and it felt amazing, by the way.
yeah.
But I've never done it properly.
I so that's the thing. So people are like, oh, I hate it. I've done a plunge pool for 2 seconds. So I would hate it if I'd just done that. Something happens, something significantly changes when you've been in there for the 2 to 3 minute mark. I
Right?
it So I call it the Ric Flair effect. So when you get to 2 to 3 minutes, you want to go woo, because you something significantly changes, and it's magic. So
Right?
once you and we go through the breath work. The breath work's huge, but honestly, you need to stay in for a length of time. and then that's when you get them benefits from the euphoric dopamine hit that you get from it, and it's class when you do it all at once. When you in adversity all together as a unit. That's why you get you have military lads who
Yeah.
they create such strong bonds from that because they have adversity together, but they get through it. And when we do the cold water dip, that's always by a country mile, always the best part of the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, you come and do it, and you'll be like, that was unbelievable.
Well, I'm coming to do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm coming to do it. Listen, you've I mean, from where we started to where you finished, it's polar opposites. Big Brother to what you're talking about now. It's it's fascinating, everything, your journey, your story, your insights, where you're at now. But thanks for your time. If I could ask you, if you could give me one question to take my next podcast, what would you want this to take into the next podcast? Be any question. It'd be funny, be deep, whatever.
What you will ask the next person?
Yes. Yes.
Tell me your best story.
Right. Okay. Got it. Listen, let's arrange the cold water dip.
Yeah.
Not a dip. That sounds like I'm. Let's arrange it.
That's what
also the podcast. I'll come with my dad bod out and all that, which is part of it, right? It's the part of it.
Absolutely.
I used to be an athlete. I'm not now. I've got a dad bod. It's part of the anxiety. I'll bring my bag of anxiety with us as well. But thanks for your time. You're an absolute legend. And
having me.
Yeah, and we'll go for a coffee and a brew or whatever, a beer soon. All right, mate.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Appreciate that. Thanks very much for having me on.
No bother, mate. Cheers, pal.
Cheers, matey. Thank you.